Bahia bowls. Obviously, there are so many concepts like that, but I would love to hear how you got started and what makes you guys different.
Yeah, sure. So we started the concept back in 2017 with a family friend. So me and him, we were looking to do something in the area, and the only requirement was that it was something the community didn't have yet. So initially we were, believe it or not, looking at bagels because it was something that really New York style bagels weren't there yet.
Right.
We really quickly decided that might be a little too labor intensive, so we switched gears, and this açaí thing was starting to take off. So we figured we had the 1,400 square foot space that we were looking at. It'd be perfect for this. There was nothing around, so we just went for it. And at the start, it was way simpler, just 2 types of bowls and 6 smoothies and some coffee, and that was it. But since we've expanded the menu a lot, obviously amped up the design and the whole brand overall, and launched the franchise program.
Wow. Yeah. So this is back in 2017.
Yes.
Was this the first business venture for you and Van?
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
It was.
Yeah.
So you had that nervous but exciting entrepreneurial spirit, but we call it an entrepreneurial seizure. If you're familiar with Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth, where, just one day you have this idea like, I've got to do a business.
Yeah.
And there's no turning back.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So what was life like starting out?
Oh, man. I mean, I was in the store a lot, right? So that was the whole thing was I was running the day-to-day for the first location for a while. Okay. So I was in there 16-hour days, a lot of days, just making it work and figuring out the operation, working out the kinks and everything like that. It was a lot, but it was good. A huge learning experience, and at the end of the day, I just didn't want to work for anybody else.
Yeah, cool.
Thing, so.
What did you guys decide on? Okay, how are we going to be different? What was the big difference for you guys?
From the start, it was more let's simplify this process, because back 6-7 years ago, açaí bowls, we were going to a lot of places to see them, and I was finding the ordering process very difficult as somebody who was coming into it, with no prior knowledge of açaí bowls, and just figuring out, they'd have 20 different bowls on the menu, and there's just slight differences between all the different bowls and different variations, and I didn't even know what açaí was.
Right.
So we came in, but once you try it, it's great. It tastes awesome. It's fresh fruit, and so we said let's simplify this to start. The people in our community have never seen this before. Let's make the ordering process really simple, and that was where we started. We perfected the açaí recipe. We made a couple simple smoothies, so it was 1 açaí bowl, 1 pitaya bowl. That's what we started with, and 6 smoothies. Okay. And just a heavy emphasis on customization. We had Nutella, peanut butter, cookie butter, and extra fruit and that kind of thing. So we just put a heavy emphasis on order it the way it is and add what you want to it or take off what you want. And then we went from there. Now, since then we've expanded into some food options with salads, wraps, and that kind of thing. And now we're a little differentiated in the fact that we try to be more of a meal replacement. We pitch our açaí bowls and the salads and wraps as more of a meal replacement. We don't want to be competing with Haagen-Dazs and other, places that might be considered a treat or dessert category. We want to be firmly in that fast casual meal replacement, competing for customers with Chipotle and Panera and that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah. That's a great alternative. And so you guys started in 2017. You opened your first company owned in the Naples area, right? And then
in Estero, yeah.
In Estero. Yep. And then you opened a second one.
Yeah, in Cape Coral.
Okay.
Yeah. So we tested out a bit of a different footprint, different market. Much instead of 1,400, went to 1,000, almost 1,100 square feet. Laid it out a little differently, but it's a much smaller dining area, and just to see if that could work in a different, more on-the-go market.
How'd that go?
Great. Really busy store to this day.
Really? Yeah. Okay, so, and then you opened a third company on before you franchised?
No, we started franchise. We were opening franchises at that point. We opened a third. Our third corporate store would have been like our 9th or 10th store.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about on what made you guys ultimately decide to franchise the concept. You have the 2 company owned.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we had the 1 company owned. We were building the second one when we started to get the franchise, franchise docs already and everything. But the initial idea really just came. We knew we wanted to expand. The idea was let's keep this operation really simple so we can expand. We didn't know necessarily how or what what that would all entail.
Right.
But we just had what we did know is we had a lot of people coming in saying, "Is this a franchise? Is this a franchise?" Which a lot of people have that same story. People are asking you, "Is it a franchise?" And then one day you're like, "No, but maybe it should be." Right. And so we went from there, and we were like, okay, well, what do we need to be a franchise? We did our research, and then a few months later, we started the process of drafting up an FTD, ops manual, getting all of our our ducks in a row, so to speak, with the documentation and everything. And, just started reaching out to people that were already asking about opening a franchise. We had a lot of organic lead generation. Almost no, yeah.
That's actually one of the most, common things that people ask about when they're starting to franchise. Like, how am I going to find my first franchisees?
Yeah.
And typically, it's exactly that. It's organic.
Yeah.
It's current customers that say, I would love to open one of these.
Usually that was the case. Existing customers are just people looking up açaí franchise on Google. And we had some decent SEO at the time. Maybe we weren't competing with that many people, but we were coming up pretty high on the Google search results. Nice. So we were getting a lot of emails even before we had the program set up or the page on the website.
So I've been doing this podcast since July of 2023, and I've talked to a number of new franchisors that just started in the last few years. I am amazed at the amount of new franchisors that started in the magical year of 2020, and you are yet another one. Unbelievable. Now, the timing might not have been ideal feeling at the time, but I understand you started introducing delivery when you started franchising, right?
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. We didn't have a delivery. I mean, a lot of the pandemic, obviously, it was a common theme. Like, it pushed so many people maybe a few years further than they were at the time, and just a little farther into the future. So with the pandemic, definitely the biggest thing that came out of that was, an initial slump in sales, huge slump, obviously, and then we're like, well, where are we going to meet these customers? These delivery platforms were really already there, but they were starting to be heavily utilized.
Right.
And so we started with those, and pretty soon it was making up 25-30% of our business, and during the pandemic even higher. And this was all incremental. It was a lot of people that weren't coming to us already. We were having, we've got customers that have eaten there hundreds of times. We'll get they send you a thing that says this is the 100th time ordering from you, and we've never seen this person. They've never been in the store. So it was. At the time, it was crazy. We didn't know that that this would be something that people would order for delivery, but it was, and to this day, it's a huge thing for us.
The pandemic was a blessing in disguise for a lot of companies.
It showed us, showed us how resilient the business model is, how far down you can scale if you need to. Just a lot of things. Taught us a lot of important lessons.
For sure. And so then you start franchising in 2020, and so now you've got this new challenge, like, oh my gosh, now I got to hope that people want to buy this franchise from me here starting out in 2020. What was life like as a brand new franchisor when you were first getting ready to make that offering?
So we had sold a couple of franchises before. We had started selling them right before we were opening our first franchise in 2020. So we opened our first one that summer, so June of 2020, which was right about the time March, April, May for us were rough. We're very scary. Sure. So obviously we had these franchisees towards the end of their build out, two or three of them. And they were, obviously panicking a little bit.
I said, was everybody freaking out?
Yeah, because especially...
How do you calm that storm?
It's, you just hang in there. Like, we were starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel a little bit. March and April and May were a little grim, so those months were scary. But by June, we were back to even from the year before. July was even slightly up. By the time we were opening that first franchise, our sales in our corporate store were slightly up. And by August, they were up 40% from the prior year.
You guys must be like, what is going on?
It was a huge deal. And that was a lot of those delivery customers and just people in Florida, people coming back into the stores around that time. And just that delivery service not disappearing, that was staying there. So, and it was different. It was different from our in-store customer. So it was fine. By the time they were opening, everything was back to, at least what they had signed on to. And it went very well.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fumey, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.